The word keen, K-E-E-N, keen, is an adjective. It has 5 senses or directions or things it could mean. It means that we could have the ability to recognize very fine or minute things, distinctions. We can see things keenly. It also means intense or sharp. It means very, very good. So we can draw these fine distinctions. There's an intenseness, a sharpness. It means that we're really good, can see it very well or understand it very well. It also means something painful or something having a sharp or cutting edge. This is what the word keen means. Have you ever used the word or heard the word used, keening, or ever heard keening happen? Keening is the action of wailing for grief for a dead person. It's a really high-pitched noise, and we may not do it well here in the United States, but keening is something that happens around death and loss. In my experience, in the midst of loss and death, we tell everybody to buck up. We tell everybody to be strong, and we sort of force people to bottle this up. Keening is the opposite thing. Today we are moving to the 5th reflection on Romans. This is for chapters 9 and 10 in the book of Romans. It is not a direct study. I'm just trying to curate and read along with you through the book of Romans, and we would be reading chapters 9 and 10 at this point. And what I want to draw out of this is actually the thing that I wanted to draw out of the whole book of Romans. This is the reason why I wanted to study Romans to begin with. It's that it moves, and that God sometimes moves, and our emotions often move in this opposite direction of being bottled up. And we feel things keenly. And we want to, or are feeling like we need to keen or let this out and just wail and lament. But we're often told to bottle this up. And now I feel like we live in a time where keening is part of the process of handling this well. So reading the book of Romans was meant to be cathartic. It was meant to be a public lament, something that we are doing together. It is suggested that the book of Romans, and maybe a lot of the Bible, was written for being read in worship services. The track record there, or the thing there, the reference point there for people would be the Psalms. The Psalms were written to be used like a hymnal or used in worship alongside the gathered people of God, gathered together to hear God's voice and to speak each other's needs and wants before God. It is quite possible that the book of Psalms was open when lots of people were writing the letters or the pieces of scripture that we have that make up our Bible. I will include this chart in this somewhere below if you want to look for it, but the Psalms are heavily referenced in Romans. Romans is built on the back of the Psalms, and not just any of the Psalms, but it's built on the back of Psalms of lament. Did you know that this is part of the voice of the Bible? That keening or letting it out or lamenting or speaking so that God knows how we feel, so that we know that we're heard, is part of the heritage of gathering together for worship and reading scripture. They ask questions, laments do. Does God exist? Why am I experiencing this evil or this brokenness? Is there any value even in praying to you, God? And in these laments, instead of bottling up our fears and anxieties, we're letting them be out and released. And today, in all the days of my calling for and asking for reading the book of Romans, the hope is, my hope was, that you would see that reading as something cathartic and a keening and a reading of lament. Because I believe, even though we're told that we're supposed to bottle it up, that all of this is like rushing water that weighs upon us. And we're not supposed to just keep it inside, that God knows who we are, and it's okay to express it and to be known by God even in the midst of all the things we feel and all the brokenness that we know. Again, this chart is included below, but in chapters 9 and 10, some of this use of lament psalms is in play. For example, I'll read Romans 10:18. But Paul asks, have they not heard? Indeed they have. And then he quotes from Psalm 19, which is a psalm of lament. Their voice has gone out to all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. In this use of lament, Paul is reminding us that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That no matter what history we rise out of, or no matter who we are, God claims each of us and promises that all of us are God's children, even when we feel like God is far off, even when we feel broken and not included, even when we're filled with lament. God still hears us. So part of the way that Psalms and Romans, and really the whole reason why I wanted to study this in the time that we're in, is to remind you that there is a way other than bottling it up to live. And that instead of bottling up, we are called and it is okay with being a people who lament, who know that God hears our very specific feelings and does not leave us alone in them. Be safe. Continue to read through the book of Romans. I'll see you soon.